It's easy to think about cities as collections of buildings, networks of roads, a web of underground services, all managed and controlled by entities like City Hall and large corporations. The city is a culmination of a million different choices made in a million different places, from City Hall offices to town hall meetings to demonstrations in the street. When a city is functioning properly, it enables to experience its beauty, to be invited into unexpected places, to wander, get lost, and play. So why is it that we have so many cities that are designed without human experience and happiness at the center? Michigan Avenue in Detroit is the main street of Corktown, the city's oldest neighborhood. It is also a 9-lane state highway, making it a notoriously unsafe and uninviting space for pedestrians. Michigan Avenue was constructed in 1827 as a modest thoroughfare approximately 66 feet wide. A bustling commercial corridor sprang up alongside it as Detroit boomed. In 1938, the buildings on the south side of Michigan Avenue were demolished in order to double the width of the road. This was a precursor to the freeway expansion that would plague American cities over the subsequent decades, hollowing out our urban cores by destroying neighborhoods and incentivizing sprawl. From 2015 to 2017, a group of residents, activists, artists, and urban planners decided to take matters into their own hands in order to insist that the road should prioritize people rather than cars. This is the story of the People First Project.
In our process to modernize our country, there was a time when people had smokestacks living in neighborhoods that was dangerous, and it was putting bad water in the system, so we had to separate our uses, and a lot of things that made sense at a time. People were moving out further, so you created one-way streets, and but I think that whenever the cumulative effect of these 10, 20, 30 things that were trying to fix other problems basically manifested itself in a way that created places that were just not inviting for people. You're not lacking for wide spaces for cars. You're now at this point, you're lacking these human scale or intimately scaled spaces at this point.
The whole permitting regulatory process, whether you want to do infill development in terms of actual buildings, or you want to narrow streets or add bikeways or public spaces, events, etc. There's huge challenges and barriers to doing that all along the way. And so the mindset now has changed very much in cities that we're trying to do these kinds of projects. Politicians are calling for them, city leaders are calling for them, neighborhoods are calling for them. But when it comes down to the nuts and bolts of actually doing the work, our processes and our regulations are not set up to grease the wheels to make them happen. So we're fighting, tooth and nail every project to figure out how we can enable more of this work to happen at the very local neighborhood level.
So I think the interesting thing is now the tactical urbanism is the beginning of the conversation.
After living in other places in the country, seeing the Midwest and seeing this city in particular, it's definitely a bit of an uphill battle to switch the narrative from cars to pedestrians.
That's how the People First Project was born. So we took the challenge into our own hands. We brought some of the world's leading thinkers and doers like Mike Lydon and Jason Roberts to teach us how to implement small actions for great effects. And together, we took our first bold steps into the street.
We are putting in a crosswalk where there was not one as a way to reinforce this is a pedestrian-oriented corridor. And so this is a very quick installation that involves chalk lines, pavement chalk, temporary paint, which will wash away. It's tempera. Duct tape to edge it in, and cardboard as a template. So we're gonna just cone off half the street, get this done. Hopefully it dries, because we got a little moisture right now, but we'll pull up the tape and then we'll do the cones on the second half and then finish it off.
This is pretty common in our work. We do lots of these projects where we go in here and we work with teams to rapidly build these kind of pedestrian first elements.
So I think part of the point of what we're trying to show is if you wanted to petition the city to do something like this, it'd probably take them a year just based on their processes. And some of this stuff is really low cost, makes a huge impact, and that the city needs to, one, move faster for certain interventions like this, and where they can't, provide a system that allows for things like this to actually be sanctioned. So rather than this being something that's just happening because we decided to do it, this could all be above ground if the city would come up with a system that would allow for us to register this, for us to make sure that we were meeting certain guidelines. And I think that that's really where the next level of where all of this is going, is that policy level of making sure that the city is an enabler of people first interventions that are being led by people in their communities. And I think when you get the power of the people in the actual creation of their neighborhood and the infrastructure that makes up their neighborhood, then you're going to get places that are more responsive to the needs of specific places. Our mission was to lessen the width of a prominent street in Detroit so it would work better for people, not cars. But let's rewind a few months to a parking space in front of Astro Coffee, a local community hangout. We wanted to make a parklet in front of Astro to motivate more human activities outside. We knew we would be shut down, but we didn't know it would be so quick. You see, the government entities in charge of streets have been notoriously slow. In fact, on the east side, one street was in such disrepair for so long that residents stocked a massive pothole with fish so that they could fish out of it. Throughout the years, Detroiters have found creative ways to deal with crumbling infrastructure. Back to our parklet on Michigan Avenue. We put it in front of Astro Coffee because it was the only area where people were hanging out outside. People would sit on milk crates and drink coffee and look out at Michigan Central Station. We figured if people were willing to sit on milk crates, they might enjoy something nicer. Word got out and the parklet was packed with people for a week, providing a snapshot of what people-first infrastructure could look like and demonstrating active street life in the Motor City. For well over a year, a major pothole went unrepaired on Michigan Avenue, but MDOT sent a crew to shut down the parklet within a week. So we're removing it. We're not happy about it, but I think we are more concerned with the long game of making this street a livable street for people. So rather than digging our heels in about this, we're going to start the process with MDOT about rethinking Michigan Avenue. But this was only the starting point of the People First project. We used the parklet to engage the community about the changes people wanted to see to the street and began to form a consensus view in the neighborhood. A couple of months later, we won the Night Cities Challenge to expand our original parklet and keep the pressure on. We chose 12 creative projects to bring awareness to the fact that Michigan Avenue was not people-friendly and that something needed to be done about it. Here's a snapshot of some of those projects.
I applied for the People's First project to get public art into the neighborhood.
I applied basically to be a voice for my community. I grew up here, so I wanted to be one of the people that can speak out for the people of the neighborhood, the people I grew up with.
So I applied to the People First project because I was working in the neighborhood of Corktown at the time, and I was learning about the history. And I uncovered that in the 1930s, the street had been expanded. So to me, that was really intriguing that there was a whole sort of past story to this space and to the street and the scale of things.
So there was a time when it was underpopulated enough that crossing that street was okay because there were no cars. That's not the situation anymore.
I mean, I think the ongoing joke is you can barely survive running across it because it's like 7 lanes or something crazy. You can't, it's not even worth going on the crosswalk. The light changes before you get across, and I'm a fast walker. So it's very dangerous to pedestrians. And it's just another significant piece of evidence that our city puts automobiles first.
The project is about thinking about different ways to occupy a parking space, reconceptualizing the way that the body typically, I don't know.
We're so bad
We practice in the car on the way here.
We
don't know.
Yeah, our project is about new ways of seating. I feel like this is so bad. What did we say in the car?
I don't know. It was good. It sounded really good in the car.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Our project is about new ways of occupying space within the city of Detroit on Michigan Avenue. Originally, we were thinking, well, what does Detroit kind of like stand for? What are the things and symbols that like represent Detroit? And we were like, oh my God, cars.
Yeah, and then we looked at what Slom did with the people's first project, designing a parklet, and we wanted to design another type of parklet that was like a bit more conceptual, but still, I don't know, a way of creating seating in a parking space.
Yeah, so we were like, okay, so if we think about what traditionally goes into a parking spot, we were like, a car, so like what can we do to the car to make it like strange but still very familiar?
So we created the soft car as like this sort of playful, cartoony, pop colored car. It's like iridescent purple with shiny silver metallic fabrics. So that, because we think that the image lasts a lot longer than the installation ever can, and it can be something for people to refer to when they're thinking of different ways of creating installations.
The project that I did for the People First project was called The Living Lot, and it was a collaboration I did with Caroline Kane. We both came to the table with varying ideas on what we could do to activate a vacant lot. I wanted to do that specific project because I saw a lot of vacant lots along Michigan Avenue, so I wanted to see what kind of temporary interventions we could do that would kind of stoke people's imaginations to see what could be the possibility of those spaces. And it's really important to us to source as much of our furniture from the community as possible. It's great that it's coming from a local business right in Detroit, right in Corktown.
We also didn't want to buy new because that seems a little wasteful.
Can you say that again?
We didn't want to buy new because it seems a little wasteful.
So we've taken all the donated furniture that we have and we're sanding it down and painting it over. We also have Mike back here building some walls that are really gonna create the structure for our living lot and the living room we're trying to create.
Yeah, we're gonna have portable walls, creating the illusion of an indoor space. But they're all gonna be painted and everything.
So all this wonderful furniture you see here will hopefully be white by the next time you see it.
Traditionally, a lot of our installations or urban interventions have been a lot of painting. Yeah, so we actually had these 8 aluminum cast animals made from recycled aluminum. There were, I think, 4 deer, 2 sheep, and 3 geese. They're animals, and then we just systematically set them up in various locations around the city. And one of the most prominent ones was we set up 2 deer in the middle of Michigan Avenue in the center lane with cars flying by on both sides. So there was an element of adrenaline. It was kind of intense. I was scared. But it was also very, very fun to get we got these beautiful pictures and we left it up there, and people were definitely seeing these animals in the street and not knowing what was happening.
My project was called a bus parklet. We essentially got this bus, the former school bus that doesn't run, doesn't have a working engine within it. And Andy over at Detroit Bus Company was like, have at it, do whatever you want with it. Ben Wolf has a fabrication shop over on the east side and does great work over there. So he turned part of the bus into a convertible, took off the top, and then opened up the passenger side of it so people can get on it, so you can see from the passenger side people sitting in it, plants within it, and everything else that's in it. You can actually see the checker and chessboard tables within it. So he did a great job of fabricating, of welding. Him and his team are really talented individuals that put a lot of time and effort into it over there. Worked with a bunch of talented people to put together this bus that has seating in it, that has checkers and chess tables, that has a park light setting with some plants and flower beds in it, and then just a place to kind of linger, relax, play games, and talk amongst each other in a space that you wouldn't otherwise think you should or could do with it.
So we had these amazing projects, and the question became, how could we make sure they were visible? How could we make sure we created a true streets are for people culture in the city, rather than just being a passing curiosity? That's when we decided to team up with the Downtown Detroit Partnership to execute the first ever Open Streets Detroit, shutting down nearly 4 miles of street, mainly on Michigan Avenue. In doing so, we joined with hundreds of other cities in the Open Streets movement, and this gave our little local project the power of the whole globe behind it. 10,000 people joined us in the streets. Each one of the grant recipients chose their spot along Michigan Avenue. Donna and Michaela executed along a vacant stretch of the street.
And it was pretty interesting because when we actually did that, when we actually put forth a drugstore on the corner of Wabash and Michigan Avenue, we were able to stand in that space, and that was pretty powerful.
Emily set up in an island where Michigan Avenue meets the interstate. Lisa made her flower canopy smack dab in the middle of Michigan Avenue.
When I immediately went to something that was kind of overgrown with living plants that people could find solace under in such a busy street. Fun, and I actually had the structure fabricated to fit exactly in a street lane, so it's that wide. And for that one, I did fresh flowers, kind of going up and over, and something that I always enjoy creating is that kind of moment of wonder where you're like, what is this? Wow, this is crazy, and it kind of takes you out of your everyday life for a moment.
Kenny and Caroline filled in a vacant lot in the street wall. Greg activated in front of Astro Coffee at the spot of our original parklet. The People First project shows the importance of working with communities to find their own power. Cities are changing, and this can be scary, particularly when people feel that the change is happening to them rather than with them. Our project demonstrates a new model for how urban change can happen. It is bottom up, it is iterative, and it brings people back into the city-making process. I'd also like to think that the People First project demonstrates that small actions really set the stage for the conditions of the broader abstract systems that rule our lives. By consistently insisting that the street be made more human in tangible and inspiring ways, we created a sense that something was happening on Michigan Avenue, and the system responded. This lesson is particularly relevant now. People are feeling powerless and frightened by the political tides of our time. What the People First project shows is that your actions matter. How we treat each other matters. If we continue to look and act toward a positive future, we can enable that future to happen, despite the inevitable setbacks. If we don't, the system creates inhuman outcomes. When we do, we bring humanity back into our public life. This is still possible, and it is more urgent now than ever. We can put the people first.